Hello everyone and welcome back. This is going to be the third video in the series for C++ tutorials for absolute beginners. If you recall from the last video, I ended by challenging you to create a calculator program with all four addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division functions. In the last video we covered the creation of functions, so you should have been able to do that using knowledge from the first video, basic input and output, as well. If you haven't done that and would like to, I suggest pausing the video now before I reveal the code that I wrote. So as I go to open this code, we are just going to start interpreting it, and I'm going to just go through it all line by line, tell you what it's doing. Then we are going to improve it, because right now, using the knowledge that you know, this is a pretty cruddy, almost useless calculator. Although it works, you probably, as you were doing this, if you did it, you probably realized that there were some major bugs with it. So we are not going to start right here in the addition function. And if you recall from the last video, that's because the program always starts in the main function, defined in the main.cpp. Always and forever, it will start in the main function, nowhere else. Then you might ask, why are all of these functions defined up here if we're going to be starting here? Shouldn't we put them all the way down here at the end? And the answer is no. They need to be defined up here. And I'll tell you why. The compiler, although the program starts in the main function, the compiler starts at line 1 and compiles sequentially, line by line, through the code. So it's going to start with line 1 and go line by line. So if all of these functions were defined at the end, when in the main function we got to our addition function, the compiler would say, but wait, what is addition? You never defined addition for me. I've never come across this function called addition. That's why you have to define it up here. So the compiler will read this line, int addition, num1, num2, and it'll say, oh, this is the addition function, and it does this. I know what that is. So when you call it in the main function, I know exactly where to send you. If it was defined afterwards, the compiler would just say, I don't know, I'm confused, I'm stopping. Error, done. That would be the end of your code right there. So that is the simple explanation of why that needs to be, your function declarations need to be above the main function. So we're going to start right down here in the main function with int num1 and int num2. Those are ultimately going to be the numbers that you're going to get input for and then pass into one of these functions up here. So the first thing, well then the next line is a comment. And I don't believe I covered comments in my previous videos, but you just take these two backslashes and then you can type whatever you want, and anything that precedes these backslashes will be a comment and will be completely ignored by the compiler. So you can literally type anything. Or let's say you didn't want int number 2 to be compiled anymore for, I don't know, troubleshooting purposes. You could do what they called is comment out that line, so it won't be ignored by the compiler, and just to uncomment, you just delete the slashes. Another useful way to comment is you do the slash, then an asterisk, and that will create a bracket comment. So right now that's an unclosed bracket. All of my code is commented out. But let's say I wanted to comment 2 lines of code out, then I end with an asterisk, backslash, and then those singularly, those 2 lines of code are commented out. And just to delete it, you go back and delete those comment braces. So just very useful, especially when you have big chunks of code that you don't want to read the code to figure out what it's doing. You can just, as you're writing it, you can go, oh, this is the addition section right here. And then it goes to a subtraction section, multiplication section, division section, and then here is the end of the program. So just a quick way that anyone can come in and read your code and figure out where things are. So then we go to a cout, which is, if you recall, is the output function to the console, and it will print you are adding into the first number you would like to add, period. /n. If you recall, if I mention this, /n will be a new line. So it literally tells the compiler, this is a string, however, I want you to do a line break right here. So it will print you are adding into the first number you would like to add, period, new line, space. Notice that space. So that will be indented a space, number 1, colon, space. So the cursor will be right here, one space after number 1 on a line, or on a line that has been indented one space from the new line, which would be from here, right there. So then we're going to use cin, which is the input function, and we're going to use this type of, we're going to use that type of, I believe that's called the input operator, into the cin function. cin, whatever you like to call it. We're going to say number 1. So we're going to get user input, and then we're going to store the user input into number 1, the variable number 1, the integer variable number 1. Then we're going to say enter the second number. We're going to do a space, new line, indent the same thing, same amount as we did up here, number 2 space again, and then we're going to get number 2 input, same thing as up here. Then we're going to go cout, we're going to do our output operator. The answer is colon, or space, and quotation. Then we're going to do our output operator again, addition, which is a call to our function, number 1 and number 2, which we just got input of. Then we go up to our addition function, num1 plus num2, return that value. So this whole thing right here is going to become the sum of number 1 and number 2, which will be added into this string. So that it will literally print the answer is whatever the answer is. Then we have our output operator again, and then endl, which is equivalent of this. However, it's not in a quotation. The /n needs to be in a quotation to work. Endl is just outside of a quotation. So the really neat thing about this line is it's doing 3 very distinct things. It's printing a string, doing a calculation, and then creating a new line with the use of 3 different output operators. So you can essentially have one cout statement and print on 1,000 different lines, do 50 calculations, and a bunch of text output with one cout, just with a bunch of output operators and a semicolon at the end. Now, all the other code in this program is literally exactly the same. I copied and pasted it, so I recommend you doing that now and just adding these comments. I literally just copied and pasted and changed the word subtracting, subtract, and then obviously the function call. So it's the same exact thing as the addition function, except we're calling the subtraction function, which we go up here, return num1 minus num2. Num1 again is come from right here and right here, which was passed from number 1 and number 2. Then we get num1 minus num2, and we return that. This becomes the value of the answer, and we print that out and go to a new line. Same exact thing for multiplication. Multiplication function. If you didn't know, or you guessed, or you couldn't guess, you guessed and got it wrong, the multiplication operator in C++ is the asterisk button, or the asterisk key, asterisk character, and the division is the slash, the backslash. So the division function is the exact same thing, and then I do a cout, end the line twice, and we have our system pause. So I think it's time. I think I went through that code. Hopefully you understand it. So I'm going to just give it a quick run. Alrighty. You are adding. Enter the first number you would like to add. Number 1, space. So let's hit 5, hit enter. Please enter the second number. I'll hit 5 again. The answer is 10. Good, that is correct. Next up, we are subtracting. Enter the first number you would like to subtract. Let's do 5 and 5 again. So 5 enter, 5 enter. Perfect. 5 minus 5 is indeed 0. You are multiplying. Enter the first number you would like to multiply. Let's do 5 and 5 again. 25. Perfect. Then the last function that we did was dividing. So I think you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 5 divided by 5. And the answer is 1. Then we get that double space there from the two end L's at the end of the program, and then we get press any key to continue, which I will, and I will quit that program. So that is essentially a calculator. So congratulations if you copy down this code, or you're about to. Congratulations, because you just created your first C++ program that actually does something legitimately useful. So give yourself a pat on the back for that. However, what if you just wanted to do division? You wouldn't want to have to just skip through addition, subtraction, multiplication just to get to division. So that's a major flaw in the program. And what if I want to divide 0.1 or add 0.1 plus 0.1? What would happen? Well, let's find out. Let's just try to add 0.1. Yeah, that looks bad. See, it didn't like that very much. I entered 0.1 and it just went bonkers. Let's try 1.1. Bonkers. Is the code still working? Let's try 1. No, it's still working. And the problem is all of our variable types, all of our functions are integers. So it can only handle negative and positive integers. Anytime we throw a decimal in there, it's just going to make the program go bonkers and just crap out like you just saw. So to fix that, all we have to do is change all of our variable types to float, which is a floating point number is the official name. And a floating point number is just essentially a decimal. It can be a decimal, it can be an integer, it can be 1.0, it can be 1, it can be 0.1.5934441. It doesn't really matter. It's a lot more universally accepted variable type, especially when you're working with numbers that aren't going to be integers. The integer type is especially useful when you have like a number that you know is always going to be an integer, so you're not going to be doing mathematical operations, or if you are doing mathematical operations, they're always going to be with other integers. So let's go through the code and change all of these to float. So I'm just going to grab a copy of float and just I'll probably just hit Control R. Yeah. So I recommend, since we're going to, this normally would never work, and I would never recommend doing this in an actual program that you made, because you would have integer types that you want to keep. But now we can just find int, replace with float. Okay. Looked like that just did first selection. So find int, replace with float, replace all. So it looks like I don't know why that's not working. Maybe one of you can figure it out, but I'm just gonna go and copy all this real quick. So let's run it and make sure it's still working. And it's not, because I'm guessing we didn't change everything correctly. What was that error? We're converting int from float, so we probably missed something. Yes, that. We didn't change that to float. So as you can see, C++ is very picky just from that error. of variable types. You can't pass a floating point number into an integer type variable like we tried to do before, because it will just freak out. You'll even get a compiler error if you say like int x equals 0.1. It will say, no way, Jose, not happening. Like we had here, we had num1 and num2, which were both floats, trying to return an integer, and it was like, whoa, hang on, I can't do that conversion. So very picky, which some people consider that a downside. Some people consider an upside, because you know you're never going to mess up and try to put an integer into a float where you never intended that to happen. So just let's go through and make sure we have all of our number of floats changed to, or ints changed to floats. All right, looks like we do. Main must reach. Okay, main. Whoops, my bad. Must have replaced that inadvertently. Yes, the main must be an integer function, just like the error said. So sorry for these errors, but yes, we are back online now. So 1.1 plus 1.2 equals 2.2. So fantastic. We'll just close out of that. So now the problem is, now that we can use floating point numbers and decimals in our calculations, the problem is I want to do division, and division is stuck all the way down here at the end of the code. I just want to do some division, and I got to go through addition, subtraction, and multiplication just to do some simple division. So we're going to introduce right now the conditional, the if statement, which is probably the second most important thing besides input and output in any programming language. So to start off, I'm going to create an integer variable. So I'm going to call it int choice. And you'll see what this is going to be for, but I'll just explain it. And the integer choice variable is going to be anything from 1 to 4. And we're going to get that at the start of the program. We're just going to ask the user what they'd like to do: addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. And there'll be options 1 through 4. And whatever they input, that will go into a conditional if statement and be linked to the corresponding blob of code here. So we'll put the addition in probably the 1 evaluation of the conditional, and so on and so forth. The subtraction will be 2, and so on. So to actually create the let's create the prompt the user to choose. So choose your operation. 1 equals adding, 2 equals subtracting, 3 equals multiplying, 4 equals dividing. Now, chances are I spelled something wrong, but it doesn't matter because it's a string. And I can read it, you can read it, so good job. Spelling doesn't matter. Well, it does. And the lesson you'll learn in programming, I've learned since I'm not a very good speller, is if you're going to spell something wrong, spell it wrong consistently. That's a little words of wisdom for you. So now we're going to get cin is our input operator. We're going to get choice. So this is going to prompt, and let's do a end line, so our end L, with an additional output operator and our end line. So this is going to prompt the user to choose the operation. 1 is adding, 2 is subtracting, 3 is multiplying, and 4 is division. And it's going to put them on a new line. I actually want to do a cout and then just give them an additional prompt so they know. Do our space. I really like putting a space after colons just because it's kind of grammatically correct and it looks better in my mind. So we're going to do that. So it's going to go choose your operation. 1 adding, then it's going to go new line, choice, space. Same line. It's going to prompt our user for the input of choice, and whatever they put in is going to be evaluated or put into the choice variable. Now we're going to create our if statement. We're going to go if, and then our brackets, just like a function. So this is essentially the skeleton of an if statement. You have the if, the conditional part will go right here in this portion. And then if that condition is true, it will go here. So if condition is true, I'll say true, it will run this code. If the condition is false, we'll go to our else, which will be if the condition is false. So that's the basic skeleton of every if statement. If this is true, do this. Else, do this. Okay? So let's get into formatting the expression of the if statement, which is probably not like you're thinking. So we're going to say if choice equals 1. Now there are two equal signs because our equal sign, just singularly, would be like float number 1 equals 5. Would store the value of 5 in number 1. But that's not what we want. We want to do a logical evaluation. Are they equal to each other? And that's what the equals operator does. In the next video, we'll get in more in depth with if statements and the other logical operations that you can do, like not, or, stuff like that. But for now, we'll just stick with equals. So if choice equals 1, that means we're going to be adding. We're just going to take this, and we're going to copy it, and just put it up here. And you can just highlight everything and hit tab to indent so it looks pretty. So now that's on our addition function. So else, and now we're going to do another if statement. So else if choice equals 2, we do our skeleton again with our opening brace and then our closing squarely brace, or opening squarely brace and then closing squarely brace, just like a function. This is going to be subtraction. So we'll grab that code, put it there, highlight everything, indent it to our liking. That's fine. And we're going to do another else. Now, this may start to be looking complicated, and that's because it's just we're starting to get a lot of nesting of if statements going on here. We will go through this all again, one at a time. Once it's all one line at a time through the if statement, just so everyone is understanding what exactly we're doing. So I just copied and pasted that if statement right there. I'm going to delete the subtraction code out of it and grab in the multiplication code. And all importantly, after I indent this, I'm going to change this to 3. So if our choice equals 3, we're going to be multiplying. So then we're going to do else again. We're going to do our nest. And we're going to grab our division code. This, fortunately, is the last one. And we're going to indent so it looks good. And we also need our if statement. Well, actually, no, we don't need our if statement because it's just the last thing. If it's not 1, 2, or 3, it's got to be that. Right? Right. Okay. So we're going to start the program. It's going to find these 3 variables right here, which will later be used. So we're just going to prompt the user for their input of a choice, and it's going to get that choice. Then the tricky part, or the new stuff. If choice logical operator equals 1. So if the user input in 1 and set the value of the choice variable to 1, this whole statement, it will say 1 equal 1. That is true. We're going to do addition. If let's say this was a value of 4, it would say choice equals 1. 4 equals 1. That is not true. So we're going to go to our else statement. And the first line in the else statement is another conditional if. If choice equals 2, we're going to do subtraction. If it doesn't, we're going to go to our else. First line of this else is if choice equals 3. If it does, we'll do our multiplication. Else, we're just going to not do another conditional evaluation because we're going to assume the user wants to divide, and we're going to do our division function. And then you should have a neat little stack of closing braces. And you'll end up seeing that a lot in your programming adventures with these nested ifs just coming to an end right there. Sometimes you'll end up forgetting braces and you'll have to trace like this one. You can be traced all the way to this one up here, just straight line up. This is why tabbing and indenting your code is so important. This one can be traced all the way up to this else of the original if statement. So in reality, it's one if statement and then one else, and this one else contains all this other code, and then is ended here. So let's run this code. Good, no errors. So choose your operation. 1 equals adding, 2 subtracting, 3 multiplying, 4 dividing. So there is no automatic line break text wrapping in C++. So you'll have to manually set that to a new line if you wanted it. I'm not going to do that right now because this video is getting very long. So choice, let's do multiplying. So choice 3. It says you are multiplying, and to the first number you would like to multiply. Let's do 2.2 and 2.1. So it gives us that answer. And then we can press any key to continue to exit the program. So hopefully this is all making sense to you. If it's not, you can watch the video again, and hopefully it'll make sense to you then. I think I'm actually going to post all of this code in the description of the video, so if you have any problems, you can quickly find a fix to it. I also challenge you, like I ended the last video, I'm going to get in the habit of trying to end the video with challenges. I challenge you to find I think there's at least 2 ways. There's probably many more, but at least 2 ways, and I'll reveal those 2 ways in the next video. 2 ways to improve this calculator. Alright, so I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're looking forward to the next video.